Welcome to the Low-Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast. Tro, good to see you, man.
I'm so happy to be here. You know, we got another one of these stories. I got a call from Doug Reynolds and said, you got to get him on. We got to tell his story. We got to help each other out, brothers all across the world. And Brian, I know you and I both were part of one of the biggest conferences halfway across the world on metabolic health. And, you know, here we are. We're so honored to have Dr. Diljan Mansoor here, who's going to tell us his story and just a little bit about him. You know, he's a doctor from Nepal, from Kathmandu. He did his training in China and his internal medicine residency, and he's been practicing for the past several years. And he's faced harsher and harsher criticism over his embracement of metabolic health and over his embracement of low-carb diets and fasting regimens. And so, you know, when I looked him up and I saw some of the vitriol, I said, let's get him on. Let's hear his story. Let's hear, you know, what he has to say. And so I'm just happy to be here, Brian. I know you're not afraid of controversy. So
yeah, he seems to be like one of those hot-headed New Yorkers, Tro. What do you think, man? I could tell he's
No, man, he's zenning out.
Awesome.
He's zenning out in the mountains.
And it's the same thing. It's these mild. It's the craziest thing, Tro. It's the mild-mannered people. Like, you know, Professor Noakes is so nice, and Gary Fetke. When you sit down with these people, they're all decent, kind, nice people. And I know our doc here is the same way. And you could see that, and you go, "Gosh, it's amazing how they get attacked." You know, they're not even being jerks to people. They're just, you know, like Dr. Unwin, they're so nice. I was like, how do you attack people like that? It's just incredible to me. So, Doc, it's such an honor to have you. Thanks for joining us. Tell us your story.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. So, Brian, it's so good to see you, and I have been following you for a long time. So it's a pleasure to see you guys here. So it's back. My story is pretty simple. I was in a med school while doing my residency in China, and I was like during practicing medicine, it was a creeping disappointment for me to see my patient. They're not doing good. They're not doing well. And I was always wondering what's happening with my patients. So back in 2015, when I was working as a medical officer just after completing my graduation, so my dad was a hypertensive and diabetic patient. So his condition started to get worse and worse every single day. Before, my dad was an oral hypoglycemic agent. So we switched my dad from OHA to insulin therapy. And despite of everything I tried, I did every little thing that I learned in a med school. I did everything that I was taught, and nothing was working for my dad. I could not control his hyperglycemia, and gradually my dad was like getting worse and worse and worse, and then my dad, after a few years, he wind up on a dialysis. So he started doing a dialysis, and so we started trying every little drugs that by the books, so I can save my dad, but I could not control his hyperglycemia. He was very, very hyperinsulinic, but I was not thinking outside of the box. All I was thinking, if this medicine is not working, I'm going to put my dad on another class of medicines, or I'm going to put it on insulin therapy. So I was trying, or SGLT, or ARV inhibitors, or ACE inhibitors. I was trying to do every little thing to save my dad. And gradually my dad had a kidney failure. So I started doing a dialysis. And after a few months, we decided to put my dad on a permanent dialysis. So we started to make atrioventricular fistula, so we can do a permanent dialysis. But due to the complication, my dad died. And so that was the moment I felt very guilty of my eyes of despite of being a doctor, I could not. My dad is dying. My dad died because of me, and I could not work. I even left my job for a few years, and I was thinking every little day, if like what's happening, there should be something. And why this has to be a progressive disease, why my dad has to wind up being a renal patient, and then he has to die because of this complication. And then in 2017 I joined my residency in Fujian Medical University, and every time I see a patient, those were diabetic and hypertensive, I was quite astonished, and I was like he's going to die just like my dad died. And I feel guilty for every time I see a patient like that. It was a creeping disappointment for me for seeing my patient not doing good. Then I one day I wind up watching videos of Dr. Jason Fung, and I was like, what is he talking about? It like, because I was trained as a very conventional doctor, like, Brian, you can get me very close here, like, how we are trained. We have no knowledge about nutrition in the med school. We are not taught about nutrition in the med school. We have to go by the book. We have to like just act the way the patient is. So when I saw the video of Jason Fung, I was amazed. Like, what is this guy crazy or what? Like, what is he talking about? So I decided. Then I started diving into this low carb world. Then I came across Dr. David Unwin, Dr. Jason Fung, and I was like, wow, these guys are amazing. And then Dr. Paul, the Australian doctor. And then I started downloading all being the most beautiful part of being a physician is like we can download the journals and the guidelines. I started to learn about this published paper, and I started digging into this low carb community. And I decided once I'm going down with my residency, like once I'm done, I'm going to start this practicing. And then I came back to my country and I started my own clinic because I knew I can't do this in a hospital setting. So I started my own clinic in Kathmandu. And it's been 4 years now. I treated more than 6,000 patients. Once I started my patient on low carb diet, and most of my patients are metabolically ill. They are hypertensive, they're diabetic, morbidly obese patients. So once I started to put them on, I started to taper their medication, help them to get off their medications. And my patients started losing weight like 100 pounds, 150 pounds of weight in one in just sort of like in 1 year or 18 months. I was like, the miracle started to happen. Whoa, like he was on 4 tablets now and 4 pills. Now he's on just 1 pills. He used to be on 3 like insulin therapy for like he was on like 100 units of insulin per day. Now like I cut down in 10 units of insulin. Their skins started to glow and their hyperglycemia has been controlled. And despite I'm being able to take off their medication in years. So that was the things that I started to notice. And so far the 6,000 patient, even I have seen the patient who used to have due to the morbid obesity, they couldn't even walk. They used to come on a wheelchair in my clinic, and now they're playing football, they're playing soccer after a year. And that was the most beautiful part. Being I decided, okay, no matter what, I'm gonna do this because this is working for my patients.
I'm tearing up here, Brian. And,
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, yeah.
Can I just say something? One, it is not your fault.
Yeah, I was thinking
By
this.
your father.
Oh my gosh, Trona, we're thinking the same wavelengths. Like your
Like,
father was killed years before that. I mean, to be in that position, once you go on to, dialysis and all these things are a death sentence. So, Tro, I'm so glad. I was thinking the same thing. As like, you did everything you can, and now your father would be so proud of you to say, look, I'm not going to allow other people to go that way. And that's what Professor Noakes did the same thing, right? And Gary Fetke, these people who stood up and said, wait, I know the truth now. I have to say something. So, Tro, sorry to cut you off, man, but I like to do that every now and again.
No, I'm so honored to be cut off. And in the nature of this discussion, I can't tell you what inspires me more. You cannot stop somebody that's, I don't know, I don't have the right word for it, but divinely inspired. When you see this happen to your father, it lit a fire in you. And when you just got the right amount of energy, gasoline exposure, right? You just saw something from Jason Fung or saw something, right? It was like, wait a second, like this fire that cannot be stopped. I can't see you stopping. I mean, what would stop you? You saw your dad struggle. It impacted you that way. You feel that, emotions behind it.
And Tro, just one other thing I just want to throw in, just out of respect to Jason Fung, who helped us get started here, right? He gave us credibility. Every day of my career, I hear people say Jason Fung saved my life. I just saw the guy who introduced me to Jason Fung, and when I started researching, and it was the same thing. Is this guy crazy? What's he talking about? It's so outside of our paradigm that we had to have a a switch in our brain. And it's amazing. More doctors can't understand. They go looking and go, wait, we're giving everyone insulin. What are we doing? Right? Let's step back and reassess and take a breath. But all these people who criticize Jason Fung, I never hear their names mentioned ever one time, ever. No patient ever came to me and said, Lane Norton saved my life. He changed my life. It was like, it wasn't. And all these people who are so quick to criticize Jason Fung, they don't realize the massive impact. And even now, studies on fasting are coming out, and all these things of metabolic health and mental health. And it's just, when you start seeing it in its totality, these guys just don't understand. They just don't understand. So they criticize what they don't understand. And your success is unreal. So go ahead, Tro.
No, I mean, like, there, no, you cannot fear somebody more. Somebody has this like sort of divine inspiration or whatever. I don't know, like this inspiration that shakes them to their core. So I'm scared. I mean, even though people come after you, and they've come after, I read things from the new, just terrible, like lies, that they're going to get kidney failure from going on a low carb diet or something silly from the, but I'm scared for them. I'm scared for them.
For their patients.
Yeah, I'm scared for them because I know somebody like you will never stop.
The thing is that the 4 or 5 months back, they shut down the local authority. They shut down my clinic, and the only thing is that the only thing that they used to talk about is low carb is not healthy for a diabetic patient, and the patients who were following this low carb diet, they might wind up being a patient of kidney disease, or they'll progress to a kidney disease. And at the end of the day, all they want to tell that all these mainstreams, they want to tell you that despite of being internists and advocating about a low carb medicine is inappropriate, and this low carb diet is unscientific, and that's despite of all the data that are coming up and every day, and there are lots and lots of people that are doing good, but at the end of the day, quote unquote, they want to tell you, oh, like, even I lost 100 pounds of weight. Oh, this has not been published into NYHA, or there's no guidelines saying that you are doing better. You have to be on pill, like it doesn't really matter how good you are doing. So everything has been very fabricated around, and the people's, and they're always very biased to the low carb community. And you can imagine being just one person in a country, how did it, like, how these things are happening around, and like everything is against you. And sometimes I'm not scared that I'm going to stop it. I'm scared because I'm only concerned about my patient. If I'm going to stop this, my patients they're going to lose a hope. They have no hope at all because they never thought they will be off medications, off insulin ever. And they were on insulin and medication for 20 years and 30 years. And once I started to put them on low carb diet, they're glowing. And then I'm not here to glorify or glorify about this diet, or I'm not on talk about just a single story or anecdotal story. I'm telling you about 6,000 patients, and 90% of them are doing good things. Tro.
Yeah, can you talk to us? So, talk to us why you started your practice, what happened, and then how, what it,
how you got on the radar. How'd you get on the radar where all of a sudden attacks start happening?
Yeah, I told you the story behind this, and then once I started practicing low carb diet, I used to see, like, before when I used to be very conventional doctor, I have seen a tsunami of diabetes in my country. It's a very socioeconomic country where people are not very rich. So I started I started to monitor everything. I see a patient coming with they're hyperinsulinemic, they're diabetic, they're hypertensive, but nobody's talking about hyperinsulinemia. Nobody is talking about controlling their hyperglycemia. Nobody's talking about their obesity. So once I started collecting all the data in my country, I have seen like almost 1.1 million people out of 30 million people. 1.1 million people are diabetic today. So I was always very concerned about like what's going to happen in the next 20 years, and how these people, and how the healthcare system is going to cope with such a huge amount of diabetic patients. And for me, the next pandemic in my country would be obesity or metabolic health. So that was always very very concerning for me. And so once I started digging into all the data and the research, I came up with data like it's a tsunami. Like it's getting huge and huge every day. And that's why my dad's story and my patient success story, these are the two factors that keep me motivated. And it doesn't really matter. I have to keep fighting. I have to keep fighting. So despite of certain limitation by local authority, after they allow me to reopen my clinic on certain condition, like I cannot preach low carb diet in a mass way, like I cannot do into public way. I have to do counseling one by one. So I decided it's better to have one patient rather than no patient at all, or it's better to help one person at a moment, because as you understand, Brian, it's very easy for us to teach people because most of them are metabolically ill patients. So teaching one patient at a time and teaching 100% at a time, it's the same thing. So I used to take a class for metabolic syndrome for 2 hours. I used to teach them about low carb diet. I teach them how to prepare their food and everything. But now I stopped doing this, and so I started making YouTube videos for my patient, and then I started doing counseling one by one as by the rules.
Like, help me understand what that looks and feels like, because I feel like you've gone through it, and help us process the emotions, how they reach out to you, what they say, how do they review this? Do you get a chance to bring up experts like, Jason Fung and Noakes and us? So just like help help them, because, a lot of times people say, well, that they are coming after us. Brian has had YouTube censor him. I've had the DEA come knock on my door. I mean, we have these things happen, right? So help people understand, because I don't think that they understand. You set up your clinic, now you're a couple years in, what starts to happen? Like one by one, walk us through that.
The first thing that happened is they started making fabricated story of some of my patients, and they're very, very.
Who's
like,
they? Like the news, because I saw some news articles about you.
Yeah, the local authorities and the councils,
Yeah.
So the patient, those who came to my clinic, and they used to collect their papers and data, and those who have visited me, and they started saying the first fabricated story was that I'm not supposed to stop the medication of a patient. I have to send back them to their previous doctors, and I'm not allowed to touch their medication. So that was the only one thing they catch me with, and saying like, you have to send the patient to the previous doctor. You cannot taper their medication. You can't take them off the insulin. You cannot take off the oral medication. And after that, there are a few complaints against me that being a physician, I have no right to advocate low carb diet or talk about nutrition. That is 2 point they catch, and they started to create problems for me.
Well, isn't that, it's the irony of this whole thing. It's like our job is to really make people healthier. And if they don't need their meds anymore, right? And we have experience in that area, because the primary you're sending them back to doesn't know what the heck they're doing. They're not going to take them off medicines. It is the craziest idea. And the other thing that's crazy about your story is they say, okay, you can evangelize one-on-one, but you can't talk to 10 people at once or 30 people, because you become more of a threat to the system. That's the reality. Is like, we have to make it so it's so hard for you. You only have so many hours in the day, so you meet. And that's what I realized in my own clinic was, okay, Tro and I we've reached way more people in this podcast than we ever possibly could have, working 1,000 hours a week. I mean, obviously there aren't 1,000 hours a week, but you could work your whole entire life, but you could only touch so many people, right? But the only way to do it is to preach to the masses. And that's why we started this podcast, to say there's doctors like you all over around the world doing this kind of medicine, and your patient success. And the crazy thing is, it's the same thing as Gary Fetke. The hilarious thing about him is he was charged with inappropriately reversing diabetes. I was like, what the heck is that? Inappropriately? What does that mean? Like, if you inappropriately reverse my cancer, you think I'm not going to be happy about that? You're helping a disease process.
This is crazy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
The only point that I could not process very clearly is that it's inappropriate for internal medicine physician to advocate about nutrition. And you cannot I used to take a class for 20, 30 people at a time. For mass counseling, I can't do that. Can you imagine?
Yeah. So what we've done, because we sort of foresaw this coming, is we've helped make the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. We partnered with Nutrition Network. We have a certification for metabolic health practitioners, so we can certify them to sort of talk about metabolic health. And we have a textbook now. We have a ketogenic textbook, which will be the formal textbook. And pretty soon, the SMHP will be an ACCME accredited organization, and this is in the works, which means that we can give AMA PR1 accreditation. We also have a journal now called the Journal of Metabolic Health, right? So that we can continue to publish, and we have some consensus statements coming that will be published in this journal, because we can't live in a world like this where you can't help people.
You can't tell them that you will be off medication if you're going to correct your lifestyle. If you quit eating this junk and processed food, you will be off medication. You can tell them, and this is the irony, and like we are living in.
Well, the irony is they have a theoretical concern about kidney failure. The question is, what's the number one cause of dialysis?
Is that
diabetes? What's the number one cause of cardiac disease and stents and heart attacks? Diabetes. What's the number one risk factor for amputation? Diabetes. So by controlling diabetes, somehow you're making the patient worse.
So true, Brian. I can tell you the story. Like it takes 5 to 10 years from diabetic patient to develop diabetic nephropathy. It takes 5 to 10 years to develop microalbuminuria, and from the stage from microalbuminuria to the macroalbuminuria, or we call proteinuria, it takes another 10 years. So each cycle is of 10 years. And what the heck is if we are going to control a patient his hyperglycemic condition, his hyperinsulinic condition, we are going to reduce the progression of diabetic nephropathy. So why nobody's talking that diabetes is the main cause for dialysis, but everybody's talking about the protein intake is going to ruin your kidney.
And that's why, you look at these big, huge, Sean Baker should have been on dialysis like 15 years ago, probably. You look at these big muscle guys, and we're not seeing all these bodybuilders who are doing inappropriate things also on dialysis.
Even a patient is having a proteinuria or having a kidney disease, and once you are going to stop their protein intake, is there any published paper that says that reducing the protein intake was going to benefit your kidney? The largest study ever done is the MDRD study. I've been to that study, and that study is also inconclusive. It does not show any benefits to the patient even if you lower their even the little protein or no protein at all. There's no significant changes in their health, in their kidney condition. So does it make any sense? Like,
and from a physiologic, and Jason Fung makes this point too, says, okay, if you have a sieve that has big holes in it and you put 3 grapes in there, 3 grapes come out. If you put 8 grapes in there, 8 grapes come out. Are you making the sieve worse? No, it's just that you're going to have more outcome because you already have the damage done, and so that's why all these theoretical concerns are idiotic, especially when we're seeing that people on a low-carb diet are lowering their blood pressure, which is the second biggest risk factor for going on dialysis and kidney failure. So if we get the blood pressure, weight, everything else better, it's insane. I mean, it's totally insane. Based on the data and the science, is more emotion than anything.
Even you limit the protein intake of a kidney patient, the patient gradually going to develop a protein malnutrition, and that is another problem because there's too little albumin for them, and that's another condition they will start suffering. So it doesn't really make sense, because 20-30 years ago, you come by the book, there's some person who tell you, oh, protein is going to be harmful for your kidney. So that was like 20-30 years ago, and that's not based on any scientific evidence. And today the old scaremongering and fearmongering is about a low carb. If you are on low carb diet, it's about a high protein and high fat diet, and at the end of the day, you're going to you progress to a kidney disease. And these things have been so articulated and fabricated, and data has been manipulated in such a way that people are so scared, and especially in country like mine, the people are not, the illiteracy rate is very high, which is so hard for me to convince them it's not the protein that is creating a problem for you.
I think that part of this is we have to fight against organized disinformation. We have to fight against, we just have to continue to present data, and there are such strong forces that don't want people to get healthy, right? And
Well, it's like we're a cult, Troy. It's a cult. When you look at it, the reality is it's a cult. The cult leaders never, they say, look, if anyone out there says anything different than what I'm saying, they're out to get you. They're evil. They're bad. So what they're saying is what we're talking about is misinformation or disinformation, right? But when the scientific data supports what we're saying, we still get crucified. We still get attacked. And it's crazy. Go, look, here's a study. We don't like those studies. We want this one study that was a horrible study that shows nothing, right? So it's crazy what you're up against, because when you go, look, I have 6,000 patients doing better. Look at my patients. How many of them have gone on dialysis? How many of them have I started insulin on? How many have we stopped insulin on? And they're saying it's dangerous for you to stop medicines without the other doctors, even though you're an internal medicine doctor, that you're trained in this. It's incredible, isn't it?
That's the irony. Despite of being internal medicine, I'm an internist and I'm not supposed to touch their medication. Can you believe that? That's the authority saying you to send them back to their doctor, put them on the medication, and despite they're doing so good and they're doing so well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would say if somebody has symptomatic hypoglycemia, maybe we should take away their, blood sugar medications, right? I think it's a malpractice to not
to take them away.
If somebody's lightheaded, you have to adjust the blood pressure medications.
Sure.
So, this is malpractice. How are you defending yourself against these authorities that are coming to you? Because it seems like this is such a challenge, and help me understand. Do they file a letter? Do they come to your clinic? What do they do? And how do you respond to this?
They sent me a letter and they asked me to be there, and I went there with all this published paper and everything, and I told them everything. But despite of telling them everything, they're not going to listen to you. The only option with me is at the end of the day, if I'm not happy, I have to go to the court. And like we will do whatever we want to do. So that's the thing happening here. And even I talked to the doctor Gary Fetke, and he was telling me he was briefing me every little thing, and started making data as everything, start making a note about everything, start like in an Excel at every letter you send them, every letter you receive from them. So the thing is that at the end of the day, they're not going to listen to you. You have to stick to the rules. You stick by the book, and that's what's happening here. And if you're not happy, go to the court.
Yeah, just keep.
And then that takes you time, and that just takes you away from patient care. Your patients depend on you, and now you're over here fighting in court about stupid stuff. That's what they did. They tied up Gary Fetke for 3 years. Noakes, the same thing.
And I'm pretty young, and that's they want me to do. They want me to start them in clinic and go to the court for 2-3 years, and that would be a very, very worst scenario for my patient.
And you're guilty till proven innocent, right? That's the problem. Is like they make you guilty already, and you have to prove it and go, look, the standard of care. I mean, we all know the standard of care isn't working. That's why we started this podcast. We're like, the standard of care is horrible. The only way to change the standard of care is to educate doctors and have better outcomes. And when you have better outcomes, then you change what you're doing and say, oh, what we were doing before wasn't working. Let's try this. But the problem in medicine, especially over the last 3 years, if you question the paradigm, if you question the narrative that's not working, then you lose your medical license, or you get censored, or you get taken off YouTube 4 times, like I did, right? For having every single time I've been taken off YouTube was having a doctor talking about their clinical experience. Not one person asked for their charts. Not one person asked to talk to the patients. They just said, this is medical misinformation, but it was the truth. But they didn't like the truth.
And you have to defend yourself in a court, and it might take 2 or 3 years to do that.
Yeah, and they tie you up, and that's the problem. Gosh darn it, that is just such a problem. Now, are you finding that more people in your area are starting to understand, like more specialists or more internists are saying, hey, you're having success over there at your clinic?
Yeah, and the one point is that the other part is that I have too many patients, and oh, that guy has too many patients. He's too young, and he has too many patients.
If you were killing people and you weren't doing good outcomes, you would not have patients. They would leave and go, this guy's crazy. Don't go to this guy who's saying put bleach in your eye or something, right? Like if you make 3 people go blind with bleach, you go, okay, let's not do this treatment anymore. So it's one of those things, when you have more and more patients, there's a reason for that. They're seeing that you're having success, or their family member had success. So many of our patients, I've never advertised other than doing podcasts. or giving talks. I've never advertised for my clinics. Why? Because it's word of mouth. Like yesterday, I had 3 people. They go, "Oh, my family member. I can't wait till they start in January. This person starting next week," because they're happy and they're excited and they're evangelizing, right? One-on-one, they're telling their people, and that's exactly what Tro's doing, and what you're doing. So it's word of mouth. If you're not having success, people don't follow you. If Jason Fung isn't doing the right thing, he's going to be a thing of the past. He's not going to have people like us saying, "Hey, he changed my life and my career." It's just the way it is.
So true. And same thing happened with me. It's like mouth of word. Like one patient came and the next time he came up with his family members, the friends and his colleagues. Oh, it's worked for me. My friend's a diabetic. He wanted to try this low carb. So that's how it happening. It started to like spread around the country. Almost everybody in the country started to know, oh, there is something alternative approach for this diabetic and metabolic patient. And then it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In 3 years, I have seen 6,000 plus patient. And that is another problem.
And are you bringing, I mean, can you bring other doctors in to help and things like that, or how are you doing it?
I'm like the black swan. So I am not. I'm the quack doctor. I'm not supposed to talk with the mainstream because I'm killing the patient. And then I'm at the end of the day, I'll put all of my patient at a risk, and they will be losing their kidney. And that kind of news has been circulated around the country and everywhere in every newspaper.
And yet the patients come.
Yeah, and yet
And
the
yet the
patient.
patients come, right? Because they know what's happening at the other clinics. And has anyone else in your community said, "Hey, what you're doing is working"? Has any like
No one
no
so far.
one?
Not even a single person would stand and said, "Oh, this low carb diet is really working for this diabetic patient, this metabolically ill patient." No one. In fact, they're against me.
So how can I think part of this when it's hit me that if you look at the people who've really fought adversity well, you look at Evelyn Boudoir-Roy in Canada and Montreal, if you look at Gary Fettke and Tim Noakes, uh, I think one of the things that we need to do is
D
bring
Life
awareness.
India, D Life
Yeah,
India, all these
yeah,
guys.
absolutely.
They're
Bring awareness to the what's going on, and bring your receipts and bring your data, right? So
Yeah,
I agree with Dr. Fetke, and absolutely what you need to do is start bringing receipts. Tell your patients to call the medical authorities. Tell people who have been impacted by you how much their lives have been improved. Bring all the data. We have citations in our app. Like you can just download all the citations. We have keto myths and facts right in our app where we spell out all the major myths, so that people can, you have this data right there. Send them the SMHP. We can help you craft a letter saying that, and get support behind you. I've seen that the people who've done the best, rally behind this. And, because I'm imagining the pressure you're under, like, the emotional pressure of being sort of told that, you know, what you're doing is inappropriate when in your heart, it is. Keep doing what you're doing because you're gonna need that support, and be more vocal about how they're coming after you for no reason. So what has your
it's
strategy been to manage that? Has it been to
so
be more
far.
vocal?
Yeah, so far I'm trying to collect all the data in my clinic, and my patients are coming up. They're making videos and YouTube videos and their Facebook and TikTok. Oh, like I'm off medications, and almost everywhere in the country that there are like 4 or 5 people. Oh, look, this is I'm off medication. I was on medication for 20 years. No, now I'm no more diabetic. My diabetes into remission. My HbA1c is 4.5, 5.8, 5.6. And I'm trying to collect all the data. And I'm also writing a paper. So I'm trying to publish a paper, 52 drug-free cases of type diabetes remission paper. So I talked to Dr. Unwin, and he suggested me to submit the manuscript into this BMJ, this nutrition. So I'm trying to do that as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely what's needed. We just need more and more data, and in the and once you publish that, you can, this is the peer-reviewed literature. You go back to the authorities and say this is peer-reviewed. What can you do?
Even I even I have peer reviewed paper of David Unwin and the other papers. They're not gonna listen. They'll take it with a pinch of salt, and they'll say just go to court.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got to get you lawyers then. That's what we need, huh?
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
what I
next
was
step,
saying.
getting you some good lawyers and because we have to fight these fights,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to fight these fights. And it's with
If
the
not, we just bring you to the US.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Arizona is super nice. You would love it.
I would love to. I'd love to be part of it. Brian, I've seen your story, your own story in the fat in the big the movie called the big like the
Fat
fat.
fiction. Fat
Yeah,
fiction.
saw your story, and I was so amazed. And you are a true inspiration,
Oh,
Brian.
it's crazy. It's just crazy when you look back. And even if you look back at Gary Fetke, look, the food pyramid that they were going after him for not following the food pyramid, it says on the food pyramid that this is not meant to treat any illness. And guess what? 97% of us, or 93% of us, maybe 7% of us are metabolically healthy. So it's a food pyramid just for those people until they get sick. And then you put it just doesn't make sense, right? When they say it doesn't treat a condition, it's for healthy people. It's like there aren't healthy people anymore due to that. Right, Tro? It's
I
crazy.
mean, it's insane. Like I had when I first started practicing, I reversed somebody's prediabetes and fatty liver, and they lost 30 pounds. And the endocrinologist called me, and I said, after the endocrinologist said, this is inappropriate. What are you doing? You can't eat that much meat and cheese. I called the endocrinologist. I said, please help me understand, why are you discouraging my patients' weight loss and fatty liver reversal and prediabetes reversal? And she said, I quote, I kid you not, you are inappropriately reversing these diseases. And I said, help me understand that. What do you mean? Well, it's too much saturated fat. I said, well, that saturated fat is reversing disease. Can you help me understand um, what makes it inappropriate? And she hung up the phone. So I think we're facing dogma, and all you can do when you face dogma is present data, present results. What you're doing with 52 cases, you're publishing it. I'm happy to help you with that research if you need help, if you're looking for some help, because this is what we have to get into the literature. And if BMJ doesn't want you, I know the Journal Metabolic Health is happy to, take that manuscript and these are the types of
I
studies that we want to
I,
submit.
I was thinking like if I can email you my manuscript so you can go through that because I'm
Yeah,
pretty I'm not so good with this data, so you might also help me to like if something to be to
absolutely, man. I'd be happy to. And then certainly we have some people even smarter than me, Dr. Adrian Sotomoda and Nick Norwitz and so many others. Dr. David Unwin is another one. Mark Cucuzella, Eric Westman. So I think we can certainly get you the help. I'm happy to take it. Send it to me. I can't wait.
think
Is it submitted yet, or is it?
I'm all alone, so at the daytime I have to look after my patient, and the night I have to write the papers. So it's very tough for me to do that all
Yeah, and
alone.
then really late at night you come on podcasts. So that's
Yeah,
that
I
makes
gotta
it
get
really
into the
Yeah.
easy.
mood.
What a trooper. It's like gonna be midnight by the time we're done with this poor guy. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. This is amazing. I mean, really, it just tells you what's wrong with the medical system, right? It's just like the people who are screwing up. And the thing is, people give Tro a hard time for getting passionate, maybe even saying some different words than most of us use. But when you go through that and you've seen the amputation, you see that helpless feeling. We've all seen that. You see someone come and go, "Oh my gosh, this is a disaster, this poor person." And I think the biggest thing that we're gonna find, and I take pleasure in this because the medical establishment went after me and Tro, mostly me, because we were talking about how nutrition can affect mood and depression and anxiety and addiction. And now the data is solidly on our side. Back then, we were just noticing it clinically, but now we're seeing, Chris Palmer, Georgia Eid. We got to drag her on, by the way, Tro,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
talk about her new book and what they're doing. There's so many good people out there, but I'm telling you, if you give someone, like you said it great, and I know exactly what you're saying. When you see that patient glowing, they're happy now and they feel like, oh, I can do something with this. I have some control. But when the doctor was telling them you need to eat carbs 6 times a day and shoot insulin every time you take, it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make, any kid, if you go, okay, does this make sense? Kids get it. But somehow doctors can't get it through their head. Like You know, when they go, meat causes diabetes from Harvard, and you go, okay,
Salt causes
you see
diabetes
me eat
now. Yeah.
my steak at lunch and my sugars go straight down. I go, okay, what is that? What are you talking about? So, anyways, it is just really amazing that, you know, and I think ultimately the thing uh for us, I think for us is that unites is like we don't really care what the medical establishment says if they're wrong. I really don't care if it's about patient outcomes. And that's what you're doing. You're staying up to the storm. You go, look, you could just quietly shut up and do your things. As a matter of fact, Gary Fetke, they said, if you just be quiet and don't talk in public about this, we'll drop all charges, because it was about stifling that opinion. Because what, and the problem was because they pushed the issue with these two guys, that's what blew it up in the world. If they would have just interfered with their little corner of the world, no one would have known. But because they went after them, and because they go after doctors like you, now thousands and thousands more people are going to see when you're vindicated, like, oh my gosh, maybe this is the right thing to do, right?
That's so true.
Yeah,
Just weathering
100%.
the storm and patience and going, okay, sooner or later people are going to see, because when you have patient outcomes, they cannot argue that. You know,
That's
my patient outcomes are so much better now than they were back when I was winning Doctor of the Year in San Diego. I haven't won it one time since I went low carb. I'm way more effective. So do I care about those little plaques that are in the garbage somewhere? I threw them away. I'm like, I don't want any part of that, because it's a popularity contest, and it's who kisses the butt the most and who's, you know, diligent in their work. But the problem is if your work isn't fruitful and you're getting your patients sicker and sicker and you're throwing more drugs on, like, for anyone to say that you're taking people off too many drugs and that's dangerous, it's incredible, right, Tro? Because we all know the side effects of all these drugs, and people are coming on 15 drugs. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you guys, this is interesting. I don't know if you've seen this before. I've never observed this, but I have a guy that I've had the continuous glucose monitor. His blood pressure was running high because of life stress and depression, things like that. Amlodipine was raising his blood sugars. I've never knew that to happen. We took him off amlodipine and his blood sugars have normalized. His A1C's dropped a point just with that, with no dietary changes. And his mood, energy, everything got better. And his blood pressure's normalized. It's crazy.
I've never seen that, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've never seen that.
we've never done a study on that person, you know,
I heard
which
it first time. That's so interesting to me. But I'm lot opinion.
Yeah, it shouldn't do that. It shouldn't. I go, it shouldn't do that. He goes, look it up. There's studies. There's reports on it. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, I look that he did it himself. So, anyways, it was kind of interesting because that's not one of the ones we think of that will cause some hyperglycemia. So it's all fun and games, Tro. But the thing is, the more drugs you're on, the more side effects, the more problems you're gonna have. That's the hardest thing about being a doctor, is managing the side effects of the medications, I think, you know, and being able to wean them down and take them off and do what you're doing. It's a
I think
miracle.
ultimately being just being like interested and, you know, to look deeper, right? Everybody's unique, and we have to look a little bit deeper. And I think that you know, what you're doing, Dr. Diljan, is you know, is you're thinking about the individual, you're thinking about outcomes, and you're treating people like family. You're becoming the doctor you wish your father had. And that is, I think, you know, a sign of a good doctor. And I want to just tell you, you know, stand up tall, stand up strong. They're afraid of you, right? And they should be afraid of you, right? They should be afraid, right? And because the data is behind you, you're going to work hard endlessly, right? And you have support. That's the other thing. You know, we're halfway across the world, but we're going to support you. So you should stand up strong, you know, because you know, everything is on your side, not theirs.
Thank you, Joe. And I'm trying my best to clear all the data and try to publish the paper as well. And at the end of the day, what matters to me is my patients. They're doing good. They're doing better every day, and they're looking good. They're doing good, and they're I'm trying to help them as much as possible. So at the end of the day, once they keep on telling me thank you, doc, and that is what I have earned from so far. Like every time they express their gratitude on the social media, saying, oh, look, I'm off medication because of this doc. Look, I'm off this hypertensive medications, this is diabetic medications, I tapered my medications. So that is the most beautiful part that I've earned so far from my patients. I'm not going to give it up just like that.
You know, and here's the thing, remember how many interests you're harming. all the doctors stuck in their ways, the pharmaceutical companies, the food companies, all the weight loss industry. We are, I wrote I wrote a sort of my mission. My mission in my life is to reverse diabetes, obesity, food addiction in as many people as possible. To also understand that to reclaim my patient's health, ultimately the individualized care for every single person coming to me. But this was the last part. I was like, what is my mission? It's remain committed against all of the industries that want to rob people of their health, all of the people, the companies that want to rob people of their health, that are profiting off of their health. And I think that's the part you're at right now. You have to face this machine that seems so impossible to fight, but you can, and you are, and you will. And that's the next part of this journey, is remaining committed against this lifelong struggle against people that want to harm. If you go back thousands of years, we have opium wars. It has been a constant attack on populations. I mean, between drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, there have been, there's been industry upon industry that's been thrown upon people to get them unhealthy. And so we need to remain committed against these industries. I mean, whether it's government or industry or both, there are people that just don't want to see people get unhealthy. And it sounds like that's your journey now as well. You're going to have to fight the medical authorities. You're going to have to make more data. You're going to have to, and good for you. I mean, you're going to win this fight. I know it.
And then when you prove them wrong, they're going to want amnesty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. You guys are amazing, and I feel really good that talking to you guys. Like, even you're like thousands miles apart from me, I feel like the guys are so like, when I talk to the people from our community, from low carb community, it's feel like a family, and then and we get connected with this because they can understand what you are going through, like what you are up to and what they're up to you, and how you're handling them, and all the emotional emotional liability at the moment for me. Like I like my wife, like I married 5 months ago, and then I have been facing this all the problems, like I'm going to the lawyers and going to like and fishing all the bad news every day, and then my family, my mother, and at the end of the day, when I'm going to the bed, all I think about is, oh, my patient, I have to look after them, so I'm not gonna just give it up just like that. I have to fight, I have to be strong. And when I talk to you guys, and or Dr. Fetsky, or Dr. Dr. Professor Tim Noakes, and then I feel like, okay, no, it doesn't really matter how far they are. There's some part of people in the world that they're with you, they're standing with you, and they just want me to stand my ground very firm, and that's what I'm doing. And thank you, Brian, and thank you, Tro, for having me on your podcast, and letting me tell my story, and getting all this story from yours, and your advice. That really means a lot to me.
Yeah, no, thank you. The way I look at it is like, if I was just the only one on the island like you are, at some point I'd say, okay, I'm just gonna shut up and do my thing and like try to fly under the radar as much as possible. But sometimes when you know the truth, you go, I have to take the consequences with that. It's like Gary Fitke and Tim Noakes. They could have walked off into the sunset and walked away and go, screw it. I'm just gonna go live my life and go fishing on the weekends and do fun stuff. But they fought, they stood and fought. And I think that's inspired me a lot over the last couple of years to say, you have to do the right thing, like Asim Malhotra, all these people who stood up and said, these guys are all crazy. They're doing the wrong thing, and here's why. And they can show it with their data, and it's such a hard thing because, not backing down, you're going to be the one in your country, they're going to talk about you and go, he's the one who opened the door for us, because I wouldn't have the courage to do it unless he took the arrows and everything, right? Because it takes someone in every country to do that. Fortunately, we already had people here standing up. We had Eric Westman and other people who were saying, look, here's the standard care, here's what we're doing. So we had the data already, right? We already knew, and we knew what we were seeing with our patients. And again, the mood, the stress, the glowing, enjoying life again, all those things. That's why we went into medicine. We didn't go there to be the most popular doctor in the country, right? We went there to help our patient, and that's ultimately what you're doing with 6,000 people that you've touched. And it's amazing. It's just amazing to me. It's so frustrating to hear what you're going through. And, you know, being newly married, I know there's stresses with that. There's a lot of stress being a doctor. There's a lot of responsibilities, and it's hard to juggle it all. Tro's doing a great job. I'm old now, so I've been through all those early stages of life. But at some point, you have to look back and go, okay, I did the right thing and I made my impact. And that's what you're doing. That's why much respect to you. I'm happy that you're connected with all these other low carb docs and metabolic health. And, you know, I would just counsel you, watch your stress level, get your time in with your wife,
man.
and enjoy life, and say, yeah, all
Exercise,
these things that we've neglected for so long.
So I saw your video. You were quite obese back in your med school, and I saw your story. It's because I love to watch my people. I feel though we are from a different background, and I whenever I saw your story, I feel like it's my people. When I see the brand story, oh, that's my person. You know, like I feel like our own fraternity, our own like a single family. So when I saw like the Tro story, I was like, Tro, you are just you has a huge impact on people, Tro. Like seeing you back in the med school and the things you're doing right now. For me, like just a beginner or a very young doctor, I really get inspired seeing the Brian story and the doctors Tro or the Jason Fung. And at the end of the day, I just want to thank you everyone for having my back. At least you guys are telling me, oh, you're not alone, you know, and that's such a huge relief for me at the end of the day.
And that's exactly what we're doing with our patient. That's why the group meetings are so important, because you're not alone if you're struggling this week. You're not alone if you had a, you know, death in the family. You're not alone if you have, you know, bad things happening or you lost your job. And so just hearing that gives us all hope. When we hear these stories of people who struggled and get better, this is what we need. We need more positivity and more good stuff. Go, look, here's my data. Here's my patients. Here, meet Tom, who's now 200 pounds lighter and he's off all of his meds and he's out playing soccer again. You know, it's like exactly what's dangerous about that. Tro?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, inappropriately reversing, you know, fatty liver, diabetes. Listen, Dr. Jozan, I just have to say this has been an absolute pleasure to meet you and an honor. And you moved me in the first minute that I met, and I know you're affecting your patients' lives. And if there's one thing I wish I can give you, it's just this stress is meaningless, right? They're trying to create stress because of what you represent, right? Which is results, individualized care, non-dogmatic care, right? And you're a threat to them. And when you understand that, and you're a blessing to your patients, and when you understand that, nobody can stop you. You know, they are scared of you.
And you
And they
imagine
should be. And they should be. They really should.
You imagine, Tro, I was on the every newspaper, I was on the every national television saying as a quack doctor who is destroying the people's kidneys. Can you imagine the pressure that I've been through? Every newspaper in the country, I was on the front paper. I was on every news in the country, and every televisions, every online, and everywhere. And there was one guy.
Yeah. You know what? You should take it. Honestly, think about it.
What
Think about it.
I'll tell you, you know, you can
Think
tell,
about
look,
it. They are scared of you. When they need to organize like that, they are scared of you. They
yeah,
are
and
Yeah,
afraid of you and what you represent.
yeah, and they're also, you know, you're following in the footsteps of Dr. Unwin. This what he took, and you have the same temperament. You're nice and kind, and you're not an abrasive person where people go, he's a jerk, I'm going to attack him, he's arrogant, right? It's because you're a threat. And that's what Dr. Unwin was. Now he's winning Doctor of the Year. All these things are happening, but he had to go through the storm first and say, look, here's my data, here's my outcomes, here, meet my patients, talk to them. And so
Even
that's
still
the
now, Brian, even still now, just last year, he was in the Daily Mail, had a thing on him, that even still now, despite what he's achieved. And Brian, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I know everybody
no,
gets
no,
mad at
I
us for
no,
cutting each
no,
other,
no, it's good.
but Frederick Leroy, who has no industry funding, nothing, and he talks about the importance of animal agriculture. He's on Global Mail, no, not the Globe, the Guardian, on the cover, like he's some sort of climate denier, right? But I told him when I saw that about him, I said, Congratulations, Frederick. I posted this on
Yeah.
Twitter. You've made it. They are afraid of you. They are afraid of you. And think about what that means. The power is flipped, Dr. Diljan, they are afraid of you.
Yeah.
They're afraid of you. The power is flipped. You have the power. When they are scared and when they're doing this, it means the power is yours.
Yeah, well, they say first they laugh at you, and then they ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then they attack you, right? And then you win. That's kind of how it works, and you start looking at that from that standpoint. And if people want to track you down, how do they find you?
They come to my clinic, and I have a website, like on my Facebook or on Google. They can go to search FDS Clinic. They can easily find me.
Okay, social media, how can they find you? What is it?
Like my Facebook is Dr. Kurt, or my Instagram is also Dr. Kurt, and I have a page that is Dr. Kurt. So, or my Instagram, or my X or Twitter, that is Dr. Diljan Mansoor. So they can easily find me.
Awesome. And we'll link that out in the show notes so people can get a hold of you. This way, they're in Nepal. They know where they can get great individualized care. Right? That's what we need to do. Individualized care. For the authorities who are listening, it's individualized care,
Yeah.
And he will work with the medical teams to make sure a deprescription is appropriate.
And we will make sure that
is that true, Dr. Diljan?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And we're asking our listeners only listen one person at a time. Listen to this so he doesn't get in trouble. Not groups. So just one person at a time can listen.
Yeah. Just don't do a mass counseling. Just do a single one-by-one individual counseling.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
All right. Nice.
All right.
Nice
hey, thanks
you.
so much. Yeah. Have a great weekend. Thanks for staying up late for us. We greatly appreciate it. You can sleep in tomorrow. We'll let you do that. And Tro, as always, it's been a pleasure. And this is my blood's boiling a little bit, but I'm inspired. So thank you.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tro. I'll be in touch with you, Tro.